so mad. Yeah, tell them niggas why you mad, son.
What do you think about the conversation that they're having about reparations now?
Well, I've spent about 60 years. That's what books for. Most of that dialogue is being generated by my books. But unfortunately, most of the people now that are trying to latch on to the reparation movement don't know what the hell they're talking about. If Johnny come lately are claim jumpers. They want to jump in on the movement just to get their name in the paper. They don't have a plan about what they're going to do for reparations. But black folk entitled reparations. But black folk entitled reparations.
But black folk entitled reparations.
Peace to the family. This is the Hood Mystic, representing www.hoodmystic.com. Please be sure to check out this article located on hoodmystic.com. The link will be in the description. This conversation, however, will be centered on the Reparations Finesse by Tariq Nasheed versus ADOS. And I'm going to imply some psychology and some philosophy to explain what's happening in real time. So reparations, first and foremost, is defined as making amends for a wrong one has done by paying money to or otherwise helping them or helping those who have been wronged. The Urban Dictionary defines finesse as getting something taken from you in a slick way. If you find yourself caught up in the current conversation, debate, or discussion, you are caught up in the reparations finesse. Quite simply, reparations should be a matter of personal responsibility as opposed to watching people on YouTube, doing your due diligence, doing your research, and figuring out if this thing is real. How do you personally make it real? Tariq Nasheed, the founder of the Foundational Black Americans, personifies this particular finesse on his YouTube show, as well as singing smooth grooves as the lead singer of Mink Slide. Antonio Moore, a Los Angeles defense attorney, and Yvette Carnell, a former aide to Democratic lawmakers in Washington, founded the group ADOS for American descendants of slavery. And to be clear, Yvette and Antonio created ADOS, and Tariq Nasheed, as a result of ADOS, created FBA. Now, in philosophy, there are things called logical fallacies, where in our everyday conversation, people present fallacies, and if we aren't able to detect or understand these fallacies, then they simply go over our heads. The fallacy that I'm discussing today is the fallacy of the false equivalence. It is when two completely opposing arguments that appear to be logically equivalent, but in reality, they are not. This is similar to black versus white. This is similar to Democrat versus Republican. And in this conversation is represented in FBA versus ADOS. And this is an example of a false equivalence or a logical fallacy. See, you have a finesser, you have an agent provocateur, and then on the other hand, you have the status quo. You have the Democratic lawmakers, you have a lawyer. And all of these things represent another level of agent provocateurism. Now, if you find yourself caught up in this current conversation, debate, or discussion, you are caught up in a simple reparations finesse, because this may be a major issue. This may imply something directly related to you that you could be doing right now, but instead you deal with the representations of this movement and their bickering going back and forth. So let's just deal with the timeline of these events real quick. The New York Times article in November 8th of 2019 put out a politically charged article referencing conservatives, Democrats, so forth and so on. And a real interesting part of that article is where they mention Antonio and Yvette as insurgents. Insurgents could also be another name for agent provocateurs. So the article went on to mention Mr. Tariq Nasheed as a supporter of ADOS and its founders at the beginning. So moving forward, later in November, later that day or later that evening, Tariq took to Twitter in support of Donald Trump's statements towards reparations, which could be heard here.
Democrats want to invest in green global projects. I want to invest in Black American communities.
Not too long after that, Antonio Moore took to his YouTube platform to correct Tariq on speaking well about conservatives, being that ADOS represents the Democratic Party and they are seeking a Democratic candidate to lend their support to. Tariq did not take well to this correction, however, and this is the initial separation of the ideologies between foundational Black Americans and ADOS. Tariq also took to his YouTube platform to explain these differences in full detail. And it was very nice, very calm. And then let's bring up the philosophy and the psychology towards this. Now, we're going to move forward in the timeline about a month to December 24th, and then we could explain the psychology of this, and we could also explain the philosophy. Now, false equivalence is a logical fallacy that is categorized as a fallacy of inconsistency. This is when an argument within itself presents a contradiction. So a topic like reparations, if anything, it deserves unity at its most core principles. It would be just the same as, high political office people or kings and queens taken to Twitter to bash each other. They would have a private meeting to discuss what needs to happen to maintain a united front based upon the severity of the issue. So instead of this, the psychology is playing out where we have projection, where it's viewed as an unconscious process whereby someone sees attributes, positive and negative, in another person that really belong to themselves. And so these two groups, instead of coming to a common ground, have decided to trade insults on Twitter instead of coming to a common solution. Now, this beef had really lost steam up until December 24th, and this is when Dr. Anderson was interviewed on that Breakfast Club, and in reference to ADOS, this is what he had to say.
What do you think about the conversation that they're having about reparations now?
Well, I've spent about 60 years. That's what books for. Most of that dialogue is being generated by my books. But unfortunately, most of the people now that are trying to latch on to the reparation movement don't know what the hell they're talking about. If Johnny come lately are claim jumpers. They want to jump in on the movement just to get their name in the paper. They don't have a plan about what they're going to do for reparations. But black folk entitled reparations.
Now, Dr. Claude Anderson is an elder. He's the president of the Powernomics Corporation, a company that publishes books and multimedia specifically for Black America. If you listen to that Breakfast Club interview, a lot of his information, whether it be good or bad, is specifically towards his market and specifically towards people who he deems that needs his information. So he was invited to the Breakfast Club to discuss all of this, economics, history, reparations. And so part of it is that he didn't mention ADOS in the interview. And then another part of it is that I feel that egoically, Antonio and Yvette, they want to monopolize the conversation on reparations. If people don't mention them when it comes to reparations, they feel a certain type of way. So immediately they take to Twitter and send shots towards Dr. Anderson, the elder, because I guess the fact that reparations was discussed in detail on a national scale, that was too much for them to take. And so shot after shot, conversation after conversation, and after being mentioned as Johnny come latelys and people without a plan, instead of showing a plan, however, ADOS decided to continuously attack the elder with stream after stream, tweet after tweet of content towards him. And so Tariq Nasheed decided to hop back on his YouTube to address the ADOS group in a scathing rant that held no punches. He went in on Yvette the most. He didn't really go on Antonio other than calling him a beta male. But when I say he went in on Yvette, that sounded extremely personal and extremely deeper than rap. But moving on, these two groups just continue to go back and forth via Twitter, via YouTube. And so at this point, they resemble to me agent provocateurs in its purest essence. An agent provocateur is defined as a person who works for the government Now let's remember that Tone is a lawyer and Yvette actually has Democratic ties, who incites criminal behavior in the populace, who gets the populace to redirect their energy in necessarily wrong ways because they're being paid for by the government. So ADOS does get a lot of support from people. And the reality is that that support does not negate or create a plan or creates a conversation or creates a study, but none of it is referencing an action. So Tariq, who once supported ADOS, is now conveniently pitted against them to expose ADOS. But ADOS plans to expose Tariq for being a pimp and a fraud. So while all of this exposing is going on, nobody is getting reparations and we are simply getting finesse. So in conclusion, who is wrong? Who is right? This question has no answer based upon the logical fallacies that this conversation presents. At the deepest psychological level, they are negative people who do not see negativity in themselves, but they see it in each other. In psychology, projection is viewed as an unconscious process whereby someone sees attributes, positive and negative, in another person that really belong to themselves. So, if you personally are interested in reparations, do your own due diligence, put forth your best effort to understand the dynamics and intricacies in a process so serious. If you are wondering who is telling the truth between FBA, Tariq Nasheed, and ADOS, neither of them are. A false equivalence is two completely opposing arguments that appear to be logically equivalent, but when in fact they are not. And since talking about reparations is not actually getting reparations, these are two separate things, and if they were serious about reparations, they would unite. They would not trade insults like children. So simply, family, do not get finesse, do your research, do your work, and bring that to the table. I'm the Hood Mystic, representing www.hoodmystic.com. Be sure to utilize the links in the description to support this channel in any way that you can. I appreciate all the love. I appreciate all the support. Until next time, peace.
Why are you so mad?
Tell them niggas why you mad, son. Tell them niggas why you mad.